Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Newspaper Review on High Impact Television. I'm Olumide Shokoya. The news has broken again and another military coup has occurred in the country of Gabon. Yes, the military announced that they have taken over power from democratically elected president, that's Ali Bongo, who won an election just this Saturday. Ali Bongo came into power at about 2009 after the death of his father, and this is his third term. This will be his third term in office. I'm not the only one doing the papers this morning. I also have the elected and, of course, Melanin Poppin, Sarah.
Hi, Olumide.
How you doing?
Description for me. Thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm fine. So what's your thought process when you heard about this coup again? I mean, we've not...
Well, hearing about this coup, this is going to make it the seventh African country that is currently under military rule.
Yes.
And to think that Gabon just had their elections on the 26th of August, and waking up this morning to see that they are now, waking up to see that they are now saying they do not want that particular government, that government has been ousted. You know, it puts a lot of thoughts in my head. But let's take a breather. We'll be back in a moment.
The future is now. We know they play. Secure the future. The future is now. We know they play. I am back with it for you. We know they play. Through the years we did for you. We know they play. I am back with it. Call your friends now, and your family now. Turn your radio on, and your TV set on. I am back with it for you. We know they play. Through the years we did.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Newspaper Review on High Impact Television, and I am Sarah. You know, Olumide, we're talking about the coup that just occurred. Now, we saw the military come up today, August 30th, on national television to say they're putting an end to the regime of Ali Bongo. This is somebody that was just re-elected on Saturday, the 26th of August. Now, the military came out to say they are operating under the Committee for the Transition and the Restoration of Institution. Now, apparently, Ali Bongo's family has held a 53-year hold on Gabon. In all fairness, 53 years is a very long time for power to be given to just one family. And I think that this was one of the reasons why the military made this move. Come on, we're talking about democracy, and then your family have been in power for 53 years, transitioning from one generation to another generation. That doesn't give other people the opportunity to lead.
I mean, let's call it a monarchy.
Let's just call it a monarchy, exactly. Let's just say we are no longer operating a democratic system of government. But now this is towing the part of Niger. Niger, you know, when they had a coup on the 26th of July, 2023, and this is coming about a month after. And this is putting a very big question on the minds of so many Africans. Which country is going to be next? Because it feels like the likes of Burkina Faso, Chad, Sudan
Yes.
have taken this step already.
Caught the virus.
Exactly. So now Gabon has caught the virus, and something needs to be done to ensure that this virus doesn't keep spreading and expanding its tentacles to other African countries. But we'll definitely talk about this when our guest joins us live in the studio today. You want to give us the dailies?
Yes. Okay, so let's start off with the Punch newspaper this morning. And what do we have on the Punch newspaper this morning?
Okay, we're waiting for the Punch newspaper. We have it on the screen.
All right. The Punch newspaper, the writer says, the headline says, fuel queues hit Lagos and others as thieves vandalize pipelines. We have a couple of riders there. Let me take the first riders. Marketers hold petrol loading, blame vandals for disruption. More filling stations short as import hiccups hurt supply. Now, I thought we were done with this whole fuel scarcity.
Done.
Fuel subsidy was removed.
There's
so
been scarcity of fuel for a while now, Olumide. There's been scarcity of fuel. You go to fuel stations, some of them are not even selling. The ones that are selling, you meet very long, queue and all of that. There's been scarcity of fuel now for a while, I must say. So I don't think that fuel scarcity has gone anywhere.
Now, we are battling with fuel price increase and now fuel scarcity. So which one are we don't, there's no time for all this. I feel there's no time for all this. You have removed fuel scarcity. Now FX market is affecting
petrol subsidy.
Petrol subsidy rather. You've removed it. Now we are being told that as long as the dollar goes up, it will affect petrol price. Now there's not even fuel to buy.
Well, marketers apparently are halting the loading of petrol owing to certain reasons. So I think that maybe it's time for us to hear something from the chairman of the NNPCL. Maybe it's time for us to understand what exactly is going on now. Is it the price of Forex? Is it the fact that the prices are not stable?
Yes.
Is it owing to the global crude oil issue? Whatever it is, let us understand. Now, we know that the petrol price has gone to about 568 naira or thereabouts for most fuel stations.
Yes.
And people are still trying to adjust to getting it at that rate. Now, having some sort of scarcity, I don't think that that's going to be in it. These days, people are dropping their vehicles. People are not even going out with their cars. People would rather, take the public transportation, because by the time you think about how much you're going to use to buy fuel, transport yourself, traffic.
No more O&Bs again. It has reduced.
Oh no! So that part. Come on, trust Nigerians and Lagosians. They are still O&Bs. Olumide, they are still O&Bs. Trust me, people are still having the life of their time, the time of their life.
Yes.
Come on, the time of their life.
The time of their life. I think another thing that might affect this fuel scarcity is petrol stations will start to hold fuel, and it will have a black market. And
they've always been doing that.
They've always been doing that.
They've always been doing that. I recall when the fuel price was initially increased.
Yes.
From 165.
In fact, when President TINUBU announced there was no fuel subsidy, filling stations some filling stations shut.
I had a personal experience. Went to get fuel, and they were selling. Everything was okay. People were on the queue, and just as it was about to get to my turn, they just came and said they don't have is it either diesel or fuel to fuel their generator to pump fuel, that they are not selling again. And we're like, okay, what is going on? They just said they are not selling again. And we stayed for a while, and we left. And then after some hours, we came back, and we saw that they were actually selling, but they had increased the price ridiculously. So they needed to do that so that people would leave, and then there was some sort of inflation in the price. And then people, you don't have a choice. They were like the only ones selling at the time. So would you just sit back and say, okay, I'm not going to get this? I think we're the ones that take advantage of ourselves.
And now that, the president may double as the petroleum minister, I think that particular ministry needs someone really, because the president's already saddled with a whole lot of issues to handle. He's managing Nigeria. So you now saying you want to manage the petroleum industry.
Besides the fact that he's managing Nigeria, he's managing ECOWAS, and there's been another cool.
Honestly.
So, but let's move on. We still have a lot of
Let's
things
move
to
on.
take on the
On
papers.
top of the nameplate, we have Cameroon Dam opening. 700 billion naira CBN farmers loan under threat in flooded states. Yes, that's another major issue. Now, this Anchor Borrowers program, which offered farmers loan amounting to about 700, this is being threatened because if this flood comes, it will sweep away all the sweat, all the crops that has been planted, waiting to harvest. Now, I don't know what the country, I don't know what the federal government or the Economic Council, what they're planning to do at this. And another question is, have we taken any measures for this opening of Gaji Dam? Are we actually... Lagdo Dam, are we actually, because I've not seen any initiative. All right, let's move down. Beside that, we have Niger. Algeria demands 6-month transition from junta. I don't know whether the military junta in Nigeria are ready for that, but well, let's see how that goes. Now, below that, we have a picture. Yes, I saw that story, the picture of Dave Humai. That's the Minister for Works. He was in Lagos to inspect some of the projects that the federal government was doing. And you can see below that, you can see Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Federal government plans September inauguration. There's another story, I don't know how true that is, that he said the toll gates along the federal highways might resume, might come back, and they might start collecting toll fees. We hope that we hope that would not. We're not ready for that. We are not even ready for that. All right, below that we have I never diverted Ogun local government funds, 10.8 billion naira bailout. That's according to Governor Abiodun. Yes, over the weekend he was being accused of doing that. So he has come out now to debunk that.
He wasn't going to accept it before.
Yeah, of course.
There was no way he would actually come out to say, oh, yes, so I diverted local government funds. And that wasn't going to happen. Yeah, and there's this issue about, and it was in the papers also, that governors are disobeying the federal government. They don't want to, they don't want to allow the local governments have their autonomy. That they have taken over the whole thing, and well, let's see how that plays out. Beside that, man unleashes dog on policeman to evade arrest. Interesting.
Very interesting. And the last one, NNPP divided over TINUBU, Atiku, faction suspends Kwakwanso and others. That's another story, trending story. Kwakwanso, the NWC of NNPP, they've suspended Kwakwanso over anti-party activities. Well, do you think Kwakwanso was actually involved in any anti-party activities?
Well, maybe what we classify as anti-party to us might not be anti-party to them.
Yes.
So there might have been, I believe there's something on the ground that we are not privy to.
Yes.
There's a particular information or a particular action that we do not have access to, and I think that's what is also playing out in Edo State.
Yes.
You know, the beef.
It's getting too
between
much.
the governor and the deputy is not something that we can even phantom with our own natural eyes. So I think that there are so many things that are going on the political scene that, you know, it's just a fraction of it that is made public.
Yes, and we're all gearing up for the elections coming later this year.
So,
and that's all we have on the Punch newspaper this morning.
We're going to move our attention from the Punch newspaper to the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. On the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, we have the conversation that has to do with the Lagdo Dam. It says, despite flood alert, states yet to evacuate citizens. The writer says, rice farms submerged in Taraba. That's already happening.
It's already happening. Residents
vacate homes. NIWA deploys boats for rescue operations. Build new locations for evacuation. Action aid tells governor. So it's not, I don't think that everybody has just folded their arms. You know, steps are already being taken. We're already seeing people, states, governors being proactive. And I think what Action Aid is saying is actually very important, telling governors that they need to build new locations for evacuation. Now, the thing is, what are they going to build in a space of 1 week or less? You know, I think we need to look at, spread our tentacles, look at alternatives. You want to build IDP camps? Okay, how fast can you do them? You want to move them to another part of the state. How fast can you move them? But come up with strategies, come up with steps as soon as possible. We do not have to wait to see one state already, you know, hit by the flood before we now say, okay, it is time for us to be extremely serious about this. There's something about being proactive. I see that they are making steps, but let's intensify our efforts.
I think right about now, the federal government, they need to step in. They should not be left to just the state governors. This thing is bigger. It's bigger than the state. I mean, it's almost half of the states in the country.
About
13 states.
Yeah.
It's almost half. So I think the federal government need to step in. This is a national issue. It's no more, it's not a state issue. It's a national issue. So the federal government, the Economic Council, they need to come up with some sort of funds, because funds will be required.
Yeah, I think the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, you know, has come out to also talk about this and how they're going to, you know, make sure that stuffs are provided. They will definitely need funds.
And relief materials. Relief
materials, some sort of palliative in quotes.
Again.
And I just hope we don't get to see a very ridiculous amount of money.
I mean, you spent the previous palliative.
But you get details of that story on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. To some other stories on the Daily Trust. NNPP factions differ over Kwankwantil suspension. BOT's chair expulsion. That's also on the Daily Trust newspaper. Algeria proposes 6 months transition to resolve Niger crisis. I hope we don't see a case where everything that has to do with Niger crisis is put on suspension, and then we're now focusing on Gabon. And then Niger is doing theirs. We're trying to sort out Gabon, and eventually we lose track of one for the other. It's too, it's happening.
It's dicey now because you now have to weigh your options. Which one is more important? Is it Niger?
Everything
is it Gabon?
I don't think that there's anyone that is more important.
Or which one needs immediate attention right about now?
Both of them need immediate. Let's understand that Niger president is still being held. Bazoum is still kept under is still being kept hostage by this junta in Niger. And then Gabon have done theirs. So both of them actually need attention. So now it's now the approach, the method. I saw something this morning, I hope we get to take it on the dailies, where they were proposing amnesty to these bandits. Yes, they're proposing amnesty to this. But let's quickly move on because of our time. Nigerian equities beat 15-year record, hit 66,490 basis points. You get that detail on the Daily Trust newspaper. 6 die, others injured as building collapses at Borno IDP camp.
Wow.
This is pathetic, I must say. This is pathetic, I must say. Moving on from that story, Wike appears on APC-PDP campaign councils for Bayelsa governorship polls. TINUBU appoints new NDDC board and management. That's on page 5. And lastly, on the Daily Trust, we have to speed because of our time. Police storm gay marriage venue in Delta, arrest couple and 65 others. This is not even a very interesting story, but you want to read that up, you get details on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, from the Daily Trust newspaper, we'll move on to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. On the Vanguard newspaper, the lead says here how federal government can execute a roadmap for economy. That's according to NESG, OPS, and others. We have a couple of riders there. I'll take just about 2 of them. Ministers must set specific national target. That's according to NESG. Strong coordination among ministries critical. That's according to NECA. Now, above the nameplate, we have NNPP's BOT suspend Kwankwantil over alleged anti-party activities. And beside that, job racketeering probe. We didn't solicit bribe from MDAs. That's according to the House of Reps. Now, I saw that story. Some committees are being accused of collecting bribes for this ongoing job racketeering probe. I mean,
that will still, you know, we'll always give details on the news around the globe, you know, so we definitely do well to give updates on that story.
All right, and just above that, we have banks, insurance firms, and others contribute 1.72 trillion naira to economy. You can get more of that. We have pictures of we have a picture there just below the lead story here. And beside that, we have insecurity. We are discussing with bandits to drop arms. That's according to Niger government.
Oh, okay.
Now, I do not know about discussing with bandits. I think the security agencies should just go after these people and arrest them. And, you know, this talk about giving them amnesty, discussing with them. I mean, we just a while ago, some of these repentant Boko Haram people, they were protesting for a 30,000 naira that was promised to them.
Well, I saw that.
All right, let's move on. 4.2-kilometer runway. Federal government votes 825.8 million naira to compensate Abuja indigents. That's a very good story there. Beside that, we have governorship campaign council. APC reverses its own list with Wike's name. I saw that story over the weekend. Wike's name came up, and it's quite really interesting that Wike's name is coming up in a couple of states for their governorship election. I do not know now, and he's still a PDP candidate. Yes, he's still a member of the PDP, and I do not know why they've not accused him of anti-party, but well, we'll see how that plays out. Just beside that, we have Gombe shot nightclub over immoral activities. That's on page 13 of the Vanguard newspaper. And lastly, we have a sports story there. Indomitable Lions recall Onana. That's on page 28 of the sports section of the Vanguard newspaper. And that's all on the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
And lastly, we're going to be diverting our attention to the Guardian newspaper this morning. The major caption on the Guardian newspaper says, CBN BDCs on collision course as Forex black market premium widens. That's a page 6 read. There's an infographics there as Naira loses 41% value YTD as premium between dollar widens by 19%. You want to get the statistics, just go straight to page 6 of the Vanguard of the Guardian newspaper. Police disrupt gay marriage, arrest 67 guests in Delta. I want to see how this will eventually play out, seeing that this is already coming to play in Nigeria. Gay marriage, okay. Reps Pro panel denies bribery allegation, summons VCs. That's also on the Guardian newspaper. Insecurity, Niger proposes amnesty. Now, sorry, I think this is Niger. Yes. Proposes amnesty to bandits. This is a Niger state in Nigeria. Niger proposes amnesty to bandits. You want to get details of that story, you go straight to the Guardian newspaper on page 20. Private sector okays TINUBU's reforms, 6 inputs in federal government's 8-point agenda. That's a page 6 read. And lastly, federal government promises completion of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway by mid-September. That's on page 7. I'm really hopeful. I hope that, you know, that eventually comes to play. But that's not as much as we can take on the review of the front pages of the dailies. We'll take a break now. We'll be back with our guest to talk about some of these headlines. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the second segment of the newspaper review on High Impact Television. We're joined by Mr. IBILESANMI. ABAYOMI is an analyst. Good morning and welcome to the newspaper review.
Good morning, Mr. Olumide. Thanks for having me here.
All right, let's get to the first and most worrisome story that's on the papers right now. The coup that has happened in the country of Gabon. Now, we know the ECOWAS are still trying to negotiate, resort to a peaceful resolution in the Republic of Niger. Now, with this new coup, the military in Gabon, they've announced that they've taken power over the deposed president, who was the democratically elected president for the 3rd term. He's coming in for the 3rd term. He came in into power about 2009 after the death of his father. So it's sort of like a monarchical system there. So my question is, the first question I want to ask is, what was your thought when you heard about this coup? And secondly, how would ECOWAS proceed with this? Because this makes it about, I think, the 7th country to be taken over by military. So what's your first thought, and how would ECOWAS move at this point? How would they resolve this?
Basically, for me, it is unfortunate why the ECOWAS were trying to address the, as rightly said, the coup in Niger Republic, and we are witnessing this development again. For me, it is a sad story for African leaders. It shows that they are not doing enough to prevent such reoccurrence of this, because ECOWAS, they have to put all necessary measures in place. We thank God in Nigeria will be as far back as 1999, despite some reservation from other stakeholders. I think we are still advancing, but we urge our ECOWAS leader to search themselves and do the needful to ensure we don't have this repeated overtaking democratically elected leader all over African countries.
Right. So now with this coup that just took place in Gabon, this makes it the 7th African country that is under military rule. We have Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Sudan. Now, would you say that this is a case of, okay, the first country tried it and probably nothing really was done, so another country decided to, you know, take that step, and another country and another country? Do you think that this is because they've seen their fellow African countries doing this and getting away with it? Do you think that, and do you feel there's a possibility of this to keep spreading to other African countries?
Yeah, it is possible, because, as rightly said, the precedent has been laid down, and if care is not taken, other people will explore that these are the weakness among these African countries to continue in that trend. So I repeat again, the ECOWAS, you know, although at times rules are made to be broken, and it is uncalled for that you be in a power for beyond the recent constitutional allowed time. You know, at times there's this saying that law is made to be broken for a positive progress and development. But however, I'm not in support of breaking the law. But the ECOWAS, they must put a transparent and credibility process in place, so that emerging leader we emerge naturally with that will reduce the rate of military taking over. You know, right here in Nigeria, there is a kind of trending development, and then the military, they've came out to defend. We are not going to partake in this call from certain quarter. So the ECOWAS must do the needful and put themselves I don't know how to describe it, because there is a deficiency among these African leaders that ought to have called this perpetrator to order.
Right. So there's this thing. Let's talk about, looking at it now, we see that most African countries operate democratic system of government, I must say. And Sudan, Gabon is not the first country to be held down by a particular family or rulership for a very long period of time. But this is pretty long. This is 53 years. What do you have to say, or what you think can be done about leaders or rulers that sit on power and just decide to transcend and pass it on from one generation to another, but it is not leaving their family, and we say we are operating a democratic system of government? Should we just say, okay, no, we want to turn everything to a monarchical system of government? What's your perspective on that?
Basically, the trend, it's surprising to me that we still have this kind of leader sit tight and turn the position of the country to a family affairs. Basically, it's uncalled for. It doesn't make sense, because all these are developed nations that are giving funds, intervention to all African nations. They don't operate, and then most of these developed countries will copy their own style of governance. So basically, it is high time. You cannot blame the leader, because the followers, they are also responsible. They need to speak up. If everybody are speaking up, the leader will know that this this tie doesn't work for the country anymore. It's not a family affair.
But don't you think that that's why the military is coming into play? If the people are not speaking up, if the people probably are scared of speaking up, now the military have decided to, you know what, we don't want this. We're taking over power to restore.
Basically, that's the major factor. Like I said earlier on, at times some laws are made to be broken for a positive development and growth for the benefit of the larger percentage of a country.
I think you might need to expatiate how a law is broken to bring about progress, because when you break a law, there's consequences for that. That is why they don't want you to break that law. So you're saying, I'm going to break this law so that we can advance.
You know, sometimes some laws are broken so that there can be a mediation. You know, like what is currently going in Niger Republic, the African leader, our president, they are trying to speak to the Bo party. You know, law has already been broken for the COUP. So that's what I meant by that.
Okay, speaking about the Niger crisis, now a country has said that the Niger, I'm sure you are aware that Niger's, the military coup leaders in Niger said they would take over power for a period of time.
3 years.
3 years. Now, another country is proposing 6 months. And what do you have to say about this?
See, for me, I think you said 3 months, right?
No,
6 months.
3 years.
3 years.
The military junta in Niger are saying they're going to transition after 3 years. But Algeria is proposing 6 months, that after 6 months, the military junta should, you know, restore power back to the democratic
I think for me,
government.
I disagree with 3 years. 3 years, something else can come up. I think the best option is for the 6 months so that they can put the election process in order.
All right. Also, now, going back to Gabon, just the last question. Just as the military junta in Niger are proposing 3 years, do you see that happening also in Gabon? Because they would also want the same demand. They would also want to state that, okay, give us 3 years or even 5 years or 10 years, who knows, let us put things in place, then we will now return. That is if they are planning to return back to democracy.
I think if it works fine for Niger, you know, it's also good for Gabon.
But it has not been tried yet. It's still in the works. It's still being
proposed.
Talked about.
Still being proposed. I think that in any country, African nation that we've had this kind of, you know, mediation and reconciliation, everything is going on. I think that there must be somebody in charge. You know, when something like this happens, the first party that got injured are the lawmaker. You know, and then when you have something like this, there will not be in place to. Ordinarily, the lawmaker should take over, but we are talking about force. So I think 3 months to 6 months is appropriate time for them to put necessary measure in place in both countries so that there can be unity, peace, and progress.
All right, let's come down to Nigeria now. We are expecting a massive flood. We're expecting a massive flood. Cameroon is opening their dam, I think, less than a week. And even though NEMA has advised the 13 state governors to prepare for this, we're already having farms being submerged, rice farm being submerged. And some states have already taken proactive measures. But do you see the federal government coming into, do you think the federal government needs to come in to take over this, to intervene, basically, because it seems to be more than what the state governors can handle in terms of fund, in terms of building IDPs and all that?
Basically, the federal government, they have to involve in this process because we ought to have prepared, you know, before this announcement came up, because it has happened before. And in this in Koshofeye, this Agboye Riverine community, most houses there were submerged, what have you. So they have to intervene. It's beyond the state government capacity. It's a kind of natural disaster. The adequate measure must be put in place, and those communities that might be affected must be evacuated from their community.
Right, so when you talk about evacuation, now where do you think that's, so for instance, a whole community is probably going to be affected, and let's assume that a community, they have about 100,000 people or maybe more than 100,000 people in that community. What's the most appropriate means or strategy to evacuate these people? Where are you going to put them? Are you building a new camp? Are you taking them to another community? What are you providing? So what are the adequate measures, like you mentioned, the news put up adequate measures? In your perspective, what are some of these adequate measures that the federal government and state governments working hand in hand should put together for the states that will be affected when the Lagdo Dam is fully, it has been opened. It has actually been opened and the water is being released gradually. So what should they do exactly in clear terms before it is opened in this large volume? Because
it's an emergency situation, and most of the communities, some of them, they have to relocate them in terms of transportation. It might be lifting, rail, and secondly, shelter, food, medication, and what have you. And then the school children will still resume, and the temporary education support system, pending the time the flood will slide a little bit.
Do you think all of this can come into play in the space of 5 to 7 days? In all honesty, because we are expecting, as at yesterday, it's expected that in the next 7 days, the floods will come in their large numbers. So do you think all of these measures are achievable within 5 to 7 days?
Sadly, it is not possible.
So what do we do? What do you propose? In your perspective?
You know, if you said it's not possible, if you can still achieve 50 to 60%, you know, it's still better. Half bread is better than none. And then we can't allow them to be there, and, you know, lives and property will be, you know, will be destroyed.
Yeah. All right, let's also look at the health factors here. Now, if this flood come in, it would affect some places, the canals. I know people have this habit of dumping refuse in the canals. Also, the gutters, the sewages, and all that, it will affect it. And we are not ready for any, how will I put it, pandemic or any type of disease, cholera, and all that, bacterial infections and all that. So what do you think can be done at this point? Because if this flood come in, I remember there was a time that the flood came in the eastern part of the country and it destroyed the graveyard. You could see some bodies coming out, and that could also lead to some health issues. What do you think the government can do?
The government, I think they need to, the National Orientation Agency, they need to do more to sensitize the people. Okay. Some of these things, it will surely happen, but just to reduce the impact of the looming danger. I think that's what they need to do, to sensitize the people, not to indiscriminate dumping of waste stuff into the, you know, drainage way and what have you. I think that's the only, we all know what to do, but, you know, you should always tell them so that we can reduce the impact of the looming danger in our community. And moreover, the public health center, they must equip them, because when some of the cholera diseases affected some of people, they have to be treated in order not to spread some of these contagious diseases they might encounter. Right.
Thank you so much for your thoughts, IBILESANMI, ABAYOMI. Thank you so much for joining us on the newspaper review today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you on the review.
Sarah.
Quite a very, you know, broad analysis there, I must say, but because of our time, we need to wrap up the conversation this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on the midweek edition of the newspaper review on High Impact Television. Remember to follow us across our social media platforms at High Impact Studios and High Impact TV. I am Sarah also, and have a fabulous Wednesday.
It's been a pleasure keeping us company on the newspaper review on High Impact Television. Tea or coffee continues. I'm Olumide Shokoya. Enjoy the rest of your day.